Welcome, everyone. It's I haven't been able to see everyone arriving in such a long time. It's so great. As people continue to arrive, let's enjoy our time of sitting together. So if you want to prepare yourself, I'll invite the bell. It's such a gift to be together and to be back together in what feels like a long absence on my part. And to meet that gift of presence with silence, to reunite in that space of stillness and mutual respect without bringing the face of our self so quickly to the fore, just to sit together, be together, and feel each other's presence even over this way of meeting. And to remember that in a certain way, we're never separate, never apart. But meeting like this is a joyful and warm reminder of the connections so many of us have made over such a long time and that have meant so much. It's a wonderful way to meet. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Mm. one of the things that I began to consider in preparing for today, because I haven't prepared like this in a couple of months, and for me that seems like a long time. I don't know about for you, but after a long absence, what I noticed is that probably the greatest and most consistent challenge in taking this seat is not to have like some wealth of knowledge of the Dharma or be unusually skillful in responding to your questions and or being able to give a great Dharma talk. That those aren't the important things. I think they can be, and in some ways just performative, but the real challenge, and I know this is not rocket scientist to realize this, but the real challenge is to be honest, to do my best to tell the truth. But then that means finding and discerning what is most true right now for me and staying with that and noticing what's moving inside and going deeper and deeper through all the constructs and all my ideas and the fears and the longings and the identities that I'm concerned about and maybe to discern what's most authentic or immediate, what's intimate and real. And to follow that trail to the very end and through all the cul-de-sacs that. But then I also thought that actually this is the essence of inquiry itself. This is why we meet, to do this. And so hopefully I'm practicing and embodying the very thing that I'm asking you to do. And it's a pretty high bar, I think, because these qualities are not always so clear themselves, and they're always challenging. So I do my best to watch and to listen to the other teachers who are leading inquiry, who I admire very, very much, and who have the courage to take this seat week after week. And I'm touched as I see how they're searching for what's alive in them, what's most honest in this moment, and not something to present that's simply interesting to other people. Because ultimately what we do here, it matters. And what I offer matters a lot to me because you matter to me. I do my best knowing that it's most of the time not all that I hoped for or the way I imagined it. And I ask you to do exactly the same thing, to do your best. So those are things that came to me as I was preparing. And one of the things that is most true for me right now, while I've been away, is that I felt like I've been pushed beyond my limits on certain levels these days. You ever feel that way? Yeah, there are so many difficult and surprising and horrible and outrageous things that are happening all around us every day, but also in us and among us and not just around us. So sometimes I end up with the sort of really personal response is, I can't take this anymore. I can't take any more. Yeah, I see heads shaking. And sometimes it's in fear, like, oh, I can't take, I can't take this anymore. Sometimes it's an anger or frustration. I can't take, that kind. And sometimes it's resignation. I just can't do this anymore. And the truth is that I can't take it. That small, singular, alone, I cannot take it. The container's too small. And it's one of the reasons we practice. So our job in practice is to open to a larger view, to become a larger container, as we sometimes say. And maybe this is not what we had hoped for or imagined as the best response to I can't take it anymore, because we want everything to be solved and set right, and that would be much better. Um, but that's how it's going these days. And in a recent conversation with Peg, we stay connected on a regular basis, and she mentioned something that I hadn't thought about in a long time. She reminded me of a segment that's in the Lotus Sutra, and which I'll describe to you in a moment. And I'd completely forgotten about this. In the Lotus Sutra, there's a dramatic moment in the narrative that's it's perplexing, and it's also really instructive and kind of interesting. Um, and like many of these things, it offers kind of a radical imagery to help shift perspective, which is the function of these teachings. In this particular scene, and I'm going to describe the sequence, but here's the spoiler alert anyway. In this scene, the earth opens up and revealing innumerable bodhisattvas who emerge from beneath the ground. And these bodhisattvas are referred to, if you translate it from the Sanskrit, something like bodhisattvas of the earth or the storehouse bodhisattvas. So here's the kind of overview, like when you watch on Netflix or whatever, and then they do the little overview of what it's a trailer. So like in many of the sutras, after the Buddha finishes preaching, giving his talk about in these earlier chapters of the sutra, this is, I believe it's in chapter 15, for those of you that like to sort out these things. He's speaking to, as always, this great assembly of celestial and earthly beings, and they're so knocked out by the teachings and so overwhelmed with their beauty and depth that they worry about how to protect it, how to protect the teachings and to protect the sutra. This treasure, of wisdom. And so this is very, very old, and it's a particular situation, but there's something there that resonates now, isn't there? Like, how are we going to protect, this amazing thing? And so the question starts arising among the assembly, who will protect and propagate the Lotus Sutra after the Buddha's teachings? That's the literal thing but it's really about how to protect the teachings. They're saying, like, when we're on our own and you, the Buddha, are not here anymore, who's going to offer us protection or teaching? How are we going to safeguard this? How are we going to be able to go on when everything's falling apart and you feel like I can't take it anymore? What are we going to do? And so in the sutra, many well-known bodhisattvas and other beings from other world systems, because it's pretty wild and extravagant in the sutra, arrive to help, and they come to the aid of these frightened and beleaguered people with the Buddha. And the Buddha politely declines their offer. He did not encourage protectors from the outside, even though these protectors were generous and loving and skillful and probably really helpful. Instead, the Buddha reveals the shocking reality that countless, innumerable bodhisattvas, radiant and powerful, have been dwelling beneath the earth for ages, and they can be counted on to carry on the work of the Buddha. And at this point, it gets better. The earth begins to tremble and cracks open, and all these infinite number of bodhisattvas emerge. And these are the bodhisattvas of the earth that I mentioned. They begin to rise up into their fullness and their great presence. And the leader, and once again, these things are translated from the Sanskrit. They're kind of funny. The leader is called Bodhisattva Superior Practices. And he's accompanied by 3 assistants called Bodhisattva Boundless Practices, Bodhisattva Pure Practices, and Bodhisattva Firmly Established Practices. All pretty similar. So these bodhisattvas are described as having been personally trained by the Buddha in the distant past. which in the sutra emphasizes the timeless, eternal nature of the teachings and the understanding that Buddhahood, or embodied awakening, transcends time and space. So that's sort of the recap. Now, can you imagine the special effects version in the movie? When the ground opens up and all that, I see Dennis going, making films, you know. So these descriptions like this in the Lotus Sutra are found in all the Mahayana sutras. Any of you who have read them before, they're kind of extravagant in scope and they're psychedelic in nature almost. Um, and not because you're expected to believe in some crazy kind of idea. It's a rhetorical device, and this is before movies and before all the stuff, you know, we're talking about, to suggest that what is being pointed to is inconceivable and profound, not magical and esoteric in some way. It's not a fairy tale. And you're actually not expected in some ways to believe it in its literality. You know, things can be profoundly true without being literally true. But this is kind of, in some ways, a description of what the mind of awakening encompasses and makes possible. These descriptions, they kind of blow your mind, which is the point. So the imagery of the Bodhisattvas emerging from deep within the earth and rising up to meet the cries of the world are not special effects, you know, like artificial representations offered for our entertainment or excitement. These are startling revelations of the reality of every moment and every being manifesting clearly and powerfully through these practices. Remember the guy's names, the Bodhisattva's names. So it's somehow comforting and an odd way to think that there's this amazing capacity in this life, in this earth, in our bodies. So when we come to that limited, awful feeling of I can't take it anymore, where do we find confidence? Where do we find faith? Where do we find hope? Um, where do we turn? And practice, of course, is our direction. There's a piece that I sometimes quote to you because I find it inspiring, from Dogen's Self-Fulfilling Samadhi, his piece, um, that Blanche often used because it was one of her favorite teachings. Um, the calligraphy for it is actually right on the wall, right there. And there's a few sentences towards the end where he writes the zazen. So zazen is our primary practice. The zazen of even one person at one moment imperceptibly accords with all things and fully resonates through all time. So once again, it's this extravagant, but it's of one person. Thus, in the past, present, and future of the limitless universe, this zazen carries on the Buddha's teachings endlessly. So here's saying, you know what? Throughout time and space, sitting is carrying forward the teachings. This is the protection. Each moment of the zazen is equally wholeness of practice, equally wholeness of realization. So once again, this is unusual language, but it says what you do matters, and your practice carries forward the very thing that these people are, because guess who the Bodhisattvas are? And the last sentence, know that even if all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, as innumerable as the sands of the Ganges, exert their strength and with the Buddha's wisdom try to measure the merit of one person's zazen, they will not be able to fully comprehend it. So I'm going to give you a few of my own reflections before I stop here about the imagery that's offered in the sutra. Now, you know, I'm very limited. I don't claim to have an unbound, awakened perspective on this thing, but I try my best to remain on the endless path of awakening and to practice what my teachers gave me and what you reflect back. So here's a few things that have been sustaining me now in these days that when I'm facing such personal challenge and loss and like you wrapped up in global loss. So the bodhisattvas of the earth, I think, are pointing to this potential within all beings um, who we can embody and realize awakening because this is the ground of our being. I think you've heard me say, a Tibetan teacher once said to me, the ground of being is unconditioned good. It's talking about the earthiness of the foundation of our embodiment. And then their emergence of these bodhisattvas from the earth represents, I think, the realization that wisdom is not something external, it's arising within us. It's coming from inside. Dogen said you should cease from practice based on intellectual understanding, pursuing words and following after speech, and learn the backward step that turns your light inward to illuminate yourself. It's right here. And the earth also can be seen as like our deep foundation of embodied life. There are imagery in almost all spiritual traditions of the mud, that becomes flesh. And the bodhisattvas represent the inexhaustible vitality and compassion that rises from the depth of human experience. The power of practice is profound and immeasurable, like Dogen was saying. And the bodhisattvas, I don't think are supposed to represent like some special beings just coming up out of the earth by magic, but they represent ordinary people in the present age who uphold and spread the teachings of the Dharma. We are what we're searching for here. If the earth represents the ordinary conditioned mind, the deluded habitual way of thinking, then when the earth splits, it's like an opening. We call it that sometimes. You have an opening in practice, a direct seeing into your true nature. And then the bodhisattva qualities don't emerge from an external realm, but from the ground of your being, your Buddha nature. In fact, I think they don't even arise from something. They are the ground of your being, the lotus coming up out of the muddy water. There's an image some of you may have seen. I've heard a poetic line one time, you crack a stone and you'll find the bodhisattva. Some of you may have been to the De Young Museum in San Francisco. It's an art museum, very contemporary. I believe Robert Herzog and Nemurin, who did the building. And there's this long walkway, stone walkway, as you go up through this large yard. And I noticed as Aaron and I are walking up that there's a crack in the middle of it. It's like, but it goes the whole way. It's not like there's a flaw. There's a crack that goes through the entire walkway, all the way through the front door. And then as you walk inside, there's a giant boulder and it's cracked in two. And then the crack turns and you walk through another door and you open to this vast, open, beautiful space full of art. As if you follow the opening in the earth, you discover something remarkable that will take your breath away. And who are these countless bodhisattvas? Well, once again, I'm saying the same thing over and over, but they're the awakened activity of your heart and mind. When? They're the awakened activity of your heart and mind when we're not grasping or resisting. And they emerge when the conditions are right. Practice helps us when the mind is a little more clear, a little more silent, more spacious. And for me, sometimes that means that silence and spaciousness and clarity only comes when there's like nowhere else to turn. When I come to the end. There's a piece, I'm going to read a tiny bit in just a moment from Sunni Brown, who's just written a beautiful piece in her Substack, the sentence says, she said, I've always strengthened my will to live in the place where stories fall apart. I've always strengthened my will to live in the place where stories fall apart. When we reach our limit, there's no place else to turn, then compassion can unfold in the space that opens up, which sometimes is the space of giving up. And then friends appear. Friends have appeared to us recently, many, not to like rise up into some special place, but to come down into the sort of burning world with open hearts and what we call gift bestowing hands. We don't cultivate some special kind of compassion. It arises naturally when the self is no longer clinging, because it's the spontaneous reality of who we are. This boundless response if we dig deep. Recently, Aaron and his siblings and I went up to the Chimayo, the Santuario de Chimayo. And some of you may have been there in New Mexico, and there's a place where you literally, in the sanctuary, there's a sacred place where you dig into the earth and get dirt out, and it's supposed to be sacred and healing. And there are all kind of pictures of people who've been healed. Um, and whether that's a reality or not, it demonstrates something that people look for, that if you dig into the earth, if you dig into the depths, what flows out are vows, your vows, the deepest intention. There's so many countless ones who have always been here practicing beneath your feet, Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. This week, we had a lot of rain here in the desert, in a monsoon season, they call it. And you see what looks like hardly anything suddenly spring to life with the water. The watering the desert come to life is like what happens in practice is we water this place and we come out, we come forward, we find our best. So here's one last word. I said I was going to read something. I just got this a small piece from Sunni. But by the way, if you don't know, she's a longtime practitioner that's connected with us, and in her Substack is um, called Nothing. It's not Nothing Missing. Gosh, no, I just forgot what it's called. I'll make sure you can find it. But she was referencing Diane Rossetto's book, Deep Hope. Some of you may have seen it. You know, we use Waking Up to What You Do in precepts, but she has another book called Deep Hope. Because this is kind of the last word I want to say, because hope comes in here, of course, when you're stretched to the limit. So Sunny says, Rossetto makes a crucial distinction between vain hope and deep hope. Vain hope is the kind that operates in a closed system, a system that arises when we clutch partial perspectives and limited ideas about our life. Vain hope, by its nature, makes us attached to particular outcomes. And then she goes on and talks about when things turn out differently, it doesn't go our way, then we feel the resentment and rage and bitterness and blame and despair. The afflictive emotions arise because vain hope fails to appreciate the complexity of conditions we face. I'm sure most of us know this one. And then Rossetto says, this brings us to deep hope, the beating heart of our aliveness. This is going underground. Deep hope teaches that what's reliable is uncertainty. What is absolutely incoming is change. This is Sunny, sorry. This kind of hope knows that the marks of our existence, impermanence, adversity, disruption, infinite potential, It's born the moment we say yes to the ruthless furnace, the instant we stop nursing delusions of bending the world to our will, and we walk with composure to the richest part of the story, the part where we no longer need the story, and we find our inner sanctum to rise to the occasion. The Bodhisattvas to arise. Deep hope surrenders supposed to, should be's, and ought to's, and it welcomes our perplexity, our perplexingly benevolent reality. I love that. One in which all is lost and all is well at the same time. And when we know that place, the very place from which we came, our power is entwined with the infinite. When we know this place, the very place from which we came, our power is entwined with the infinite. This is where we meet the Bodhisattvas rising from the earth, from our own heart and mind. As our bodies meet other vulnerable bodies, especially when our stories have run out and we've had enough and there's nowhere else to turn, and we're left with the raw, naked, vulnerable truth. And we become that truth, the perplexing, benevolent reality that we just intoned in our chant earlier, this formless field of benefaction. So these are the things I've been thinking about in the face of the world in which I'm living and what's arising in the world in which you're living that you might want to reflect on in your practice in that way that takes you to the end where something new is possible. Then invite the Bodhisattvas to come up out of the depths and discover it as yourself.
And Flint, Sunny's Substack is Nothing in the Way.
Nothing in the way. Thank you. One of the things that's kind of curious about that, I didn't know this was going to happen actually for a while, but she's going back and taking a lot of these old inquiries that I've done in the past and then writing blog posts based on those teachings. So they're coming forward. I'm at your disposal, including the beautiful silence as we sit together. Catherine. Ah, there you go. Ooh, this is it, it says behind you.
Yes, that was very rich for me. I don't pretend to understand it, but it's landed into my heartbreak.
That's its intention, not understanding.
And it's articulated what I'm kind of finding, which is that, well, the way I've put it to myself is to keep out of all stories, emotion, to keep out of all emotion thought as much as I absolutely can.
Not be entranced by it, at least.
And not be entranced by misery or not be entranced by being heartbroken, but
Mhm.
just trying to be with the feeling without calling it anything.
Yes.
Because I find if I call it something, it brings up stories and then it ceases to have the depth. I think it becomes about me.
Mhm.
But if I can not name it, but bodily experience it, it's kind of, it's different. It's grounding.
Yes, and it remains alive instead of becomes a thing.
Yeah. A thing that's, yeah.
Mhm.
And I think there's something, uh, am I think there's something of that in what you're speaking of, what you were saying.
There is, and you're naming it in a beautiful way, in a different way than I have said it. And I think it comes out of a shared heartbreak.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking for a quite long time. I thought I understood impermanence, and I could read about it and go, "Oh, that's well expressed," and "Oh, what a good idea," you know. And now it's as if it is not interested in what I think about it. It has just come and punched me in the gut,
Yeah.
and it's a bodily feeling. It's bodily. It's not an idea. It's not a concept. I just want to share that with you.
Thank you. It really resonates for me, Catherine, because there's so many things about impermanence, about grief, about a lot of things that I thought I knew quite a bit about. And it's not that I didn't know or understand those things, but there's a dropping down or the floor falling out and something else revealed, like the earth opening,
Yeah,
more
yeah,
profound and less predictable, certainly, and controllable or understandable. And yet you can live it.
yes. It's not heady, is it? It's not heady at all.
And in some ways, even though I feel the profundity and the power of the feelings, it doesn't feel like anguish. It feels sad and beautiful and a lot of things, but it's not me suffering in the same way, even though it's totally pervades my whole being. It's really hard to describe.
Sort of see what you're saying. It's when you keep yourself out of it, isn't it? Somehow, yeah.
It's like you are fully present and you keep yourself out of it at the same time.
I, 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 I think when you say that, then I feel in touch with what you call deep hope, because there's nothing except just walk on
Yeah,
in
there are
it.
moments nothing much is happening, but you just look at John and it's everything.
Yeah. And it's something and then in the hope is feel, well, I can do something about this particular thing. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And thank you. And I often think about you.
And I thank you very much for coming forward and sharing it with me, because now our bodies are entwined again in that way.
Thank you.
Cass?
I the tender emotion from which she spoke. Just wanted to acknowledge that. And
That's that honesty I was talking about.
yeah, um, I don't know if I've heard the story of the Buddhas emerging from the ground, but as you were saying it, I was locked into the literalness of the ground. And when you made the metaphor whole of our internal ground, it 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 shook me. Um, I've been thinking a lot about vow and not being able to live up to it, and meeting my human frailties, and meeting how easily I put on other people's opinions.
Ooh, girl.
And this Colin Franz talk the other day, and saying how he thought practice was going to lead him to become a Jedi.
And who was saying this? I didn't hear.
Colin Franz from I think he's Nova Scotian. It's somebody that Trudy and Josh introduced me to, and I've just been really enjoying. But he said something to the effect of that Buddha is in the vow, not in the skillfulness that you may wish to have.
Right.
And I've that's been relaxing for me. And as you began to talk today, I just got sleepy. I was just like, ah, and I was just like, oh, the sound of your voice is intensely relaxing.
Not boring.
Not boring. No, not like that at all. But in that dropping away of things that I didn't know I was carrying. And just so grateful to have a little break from that, enough to notice that it was there.
That's something you can rest in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't there a Bible story about making water come from a rock?
Pretty sure.
I think there is one. What I just thought was when listening to you is what I'm realizing it meant was that I said it earlier, when the rock cracks open, what flows out are valves.
Oh, yeah.
Earth opens up. That's, I think, what was attempting to be in that metaphor shown. Even what looks inert or looks like nothing, if it's opened up. And you said something about not being able to live up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, join the club. But let me ask you a different question. Even though you may never live up to, or I may never live up to a vow that we have, are you willing for the rest of your life to commit to living toward and in response to the vow?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's
Yeah.
uh,
Even when I'm tired.
yeah, when everything's fallen away and you can't take anymore.
Yeah. Or my expectation, like, just patience, listening to the story I've heard before and nodding.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a place where it's nice to reference the paramitas, that generous, patient,
Yes.
ethical
Yeah.
way of bringing forward your life's energy through practice and wisdom.
Yeah. So thanks for Be in the flashlight, dude.
Well, thanks for being here. So reflect back when I shine it.
Yeah.
That's necessary. I like when I'm in the UK because they don't say flashlight, they say torch. And I like it better because it's so, you know, alive. I see Bonnie.
Hello. I just had an odd thing happen, which is that my audio equipment began making a buzzing noise about 3 minutes into your talk. And I tried things I could think about, finally left the meeting and figured out, I think, at least it's not buzzing now. But it took me most of your talk to get there. And what it made me really aware of, put together with what other people have said. I too, as Catherine said, think about you and vow and my, not being as skillful in living up to it as I wish I were. It's about presence. I mean, your words, I will go back and listen to your words, but the sort of beautiful silence that happened immediately after you finished, and it's about presence. It's about listening. It's about patience over and over again, and about knowing, we're not alone in all of the things that have been talked about today. So just thank you and everyone who spoke, because, from the beginning, the phrase, I can't take this anymore, or I can't, was pretty much uppermost in my mind. And so just today was just so nourishing for me. And I want to thank you and everyone for your and our presence with each other.
Absolutely. And I can say what I said to Catherine in a different way, but similarly, when everything stops and there's only silence and only presence with Joe, everything's whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's whole.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, she still thinks of you as kind of her boyfriend. So,
Good. Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, I know. I assumed that if we crossed paths again, she would flirt outrageously once again.
Thank you for that too.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. Bridget.
There we go.
Hi there.
Well, it's just so good to be in your presence. And that's somewhere along the line in my life, someone said, I want to bask in the glow of your presence. And I felt like I was basking in the glow of yours. So that's all I have to offer. But it's so good to hear your laugh just now with Bonnie. And I'm just sending lots of metta, because to move halfway around the planet and do all that you have been going through and the losses and all that you're managing, I'm just glad you had this offering and brought it forth. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm basking in that glow too. It's sort of like when Cassie was saying about the flashlights, I may shine something, but I need you there to reflect it back, you know. And so we're all nourished by that.
Thank you.
Helps us to remember there's possibility even in the midst of whatever the particular story is that we're carrying, you know, our particular events that are troubling us.
That's true. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. And thanks for stepping forward and being so kind to be generous in your words. When I was talking about these things flow when we're not caught in, you know, grasping or resisting, then that's when the Bodhisattvas, it's like the gate opens and they can, and that imagery can flow out of the earth. You realize that in the four practice principles, which we're going to chant now, that's the teaching. This is earth opening, rock splitting, you know, vast practice. So let's say it together. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, it's compassion's way. What a joy to see you all, to be with you all. And hopefully I'll be with you again next week. Look forward to that. And I think he's still here. Did he disappear?
Who disappeared?
Oh, there you are. I just couldn't see you anymore.
Oh, I'm working on being a ninja and a bodhisattva. Thank you so much, Flint. Wonderful to have you here. And in some of the most important ways, you never leave. So thank you for the grace and the blessings of being here. And I just want to remind everybody that Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity, and you can go to appamada.org/contribute to do such a thing with Donna. And if you'd like to hang on to meet, share, or just simply connect, just stay where you are, put yourself in gallery view, and we've got another half hour. Thanks to everyone.